Thank you, Sophia. Thank you so much. You've been very helpful, not only for this session, but we have actually had multiple sessions in the last couple of weeks where we connected with different industries/functions. And one of our objectives in these times is to connect with our clients and candidates in different ways and try to bring different added value than we have on a day-to-day basis with our recruitment and selections approach. One of them is the webinars we're organizing, and today we're specifically focusing on the insurance industry with the title called Breaking Ground on Modern Insurance, where we're going to get a perspective on product, processes, distribution, and technology within the industry. At Page, we have taken the long-term approach in investing in our practice in insurance. We do feel that insurance is a long-term growing trend, especially in a country like India, where there's still a lot of scope for growth. And the current situation today with COVID will only accelerate that particular instance. And therefore, we gathered today 4 panelists for us to get a little bit insights on each of the different topics. I'm going to pass on the word to 2 wonderful people in my team. One is Alok Kumar, who takes care of the insurance practice, together with Stuti Ralan, who is in his team and also going to help you through today on the call. They both come actually from an insurance background. One is from HDFC Life and the other one from DHFL Pramerica. So these are experts, and they will take us on the journey in the next 75 minutes. Over to you, Alok and Stuti.
Thank you, Nico. Thank you for the introduction. Good evening, everyone. A big thumbs up for everyone for joining us on this webinar. I know it's bang in the middle of the day, so big thank you for joining us. We hope to make it as interesting as possible. The idea is to come out of it with strong takeaways about the insurance industry. Insurance for me has always been a very interesting segment, and more importantly, it's a very interesting animal in itself. An industry that's always been at the cusp of breaking into the big league, a definite moneymaker for any of its financial partners, an industry with the consumer's welfare center at its core. However, it's always been taken with a pinch of salt. An industry that has also seen its own shares of ups and downs, be it the global financial crisis or IRDAI coming down heavily on agent commissions and product mis-selling. Insurance as an industry has always come out of it as a much more evolved segment. I don't see COVID crisis as an exception. Insurance in India stands at a very crucial juncture wherein every status quo as we speak is being challenged. The fundamentals of the business are definitely strong, but does it have what it takes to be a modern insurer? We deep dive into the key elements of the business, be it that is product, distribution, technology, and claims and operations, to find out what's in store for us for times to come. To help us to do that, we have a very interesting panel with us. I'll start off with introducing them. We have Rohit Ajgaonkar. Rohit is the appointed actuary and chief risk officer for Raheja QBE General Insurance. Someone who's had a very interesting journey in himself. Started off with life insurance, went into consulting, and now leading the actuarial practice for Raheja QBE. We have Nikhil. Nikhil is SVP Account Management and Head Training Alternate Channels for Future Generali India Life Insurance. Again, someone who will give us a perspective not only from the insurer side, but also from the distributor side, being an ex-Standard Chartered and an ex-Bharti AXA himself. We have Ravinder from the consulting side. He will take us through the technology, rather the digital and the analytics part. He's an ex-director Financial Service Advisory for EY. He was taking care of Middle East, Africa, and India. I'm sure he'll add value with his previous insurance experience with Max Bupa, as well as the consulting experience that he's had with EY. To round it off and sort of completing the insurance value chain, we have Amol Gowda. Amol is Director Operation and Claims for Liberty Mutual Insurance, manages 3 geographies, India, Singapore, and Hong Kong. He's an ex-McKinsey, again, someone who started off with life insurance, went into consulting, and now with an international insurer. So I'm sure he'll bring in that perspective as well. I'll kick off the discussion with Rohit. Rohit, I believe the overall actuarial function, and more so within the general insurance space, is sort of at a very interesting juncture. The way We've seen COVID-specific products coming in, and we've seen pay-as-you-use motor insurance coming in. I do believe that there is a huge amount of innovation that is going to kick in. I'll sort of pass on the buck to you to sort of help us understand. Actuarial as a function, I do believe will be both an innovator or a generator of new strategies within the insurance landscape, as well as a function that's reacting to a lot of what is happening from a macroeconomic perspective as well. It would be great if you could take us through that.
Yeah. Thanks, Alok, for the same. Good evening, everybody. Thanks, everyone, for joining. I hope you, your families, everybody is safe, sound, healthy. Like Alok said, these are trying times, and the insurance industry is also on a cusp of a lot of uncertainties. Not just with general, but the same problems with life, with the economic situation also on a downturn, the world facing a recession and so on. The general insurance industry stands at a very interesting position because the population that the general insurance industry per se is going to be the least affected by all of this. Though the perception seems to be broadly in line with the expectations, but considering that majority of the insurance premiums for general insurance comes from motor and there is no new car sales happening for the last 2 months, the general insurance industry is also expected to take a significant hit. Having said that, there are interesting product ideas, there are interesting service ideas also in play in terms of claim settlement, in terms of settling claims, analyzing claims virtually, and to innovative distribution partners like the Swiggies and Zomatos of your world to sell, distribute, and service products as well in some cases. So these are interesting times, and I hope all of us come out of this slightly smarter and from an actuarial standpoint with a lot of more data to price and tide over these times if they come in the future as well. So I'll just share quickly the presentation, which has brief pointers which I will touch on. Just give me a second. So I hope it's visible.
Yeah, Rohit, it's there.
Yeah, so I will initially start with the biggest elephant in the room in terms of the impact of COVID, which is the health insurance profitability. Now, I was in discussion for the last couple of days with a lot of industry people. The broad ballpark figure is this year per se, the industry is going to face a loss of about 600 to 700 crores only on the health insurance portfolio. Now, those are big numbers. What will happen remains to be seen. As on the data published by certain institutions within the insurance space, there are about 1,800, 1,900 COVID claims so far, amounting to about 37-40 crores, 2 lakhs per claim, and all those sorts of things which are happening. The biggest of the companies will face only because of this COVID thing, 100, 150 crores of claims only on their portfolio, which is a huge number. Coupled with the fact that these claims have to be settled quickly. Also, what a lot of people seem to think, and what my personal opinion is that because of this lockdown and because of hospitals not admitting non-COVID people, there has been a significant delay in treatment of most of the planned surgeries. Now, post this lockdown, what will happen is that there will be a sudden surge of claims. All these people who have stayed at home for, let's say, a cataract operation or other sorts of operations which are not so-called critical, will go to the hospitals, do their surgeries, use those pre-authorizations which were done previously, and there would be a sudden surge of claims. So from an actuarial standpoint, it becomes extremely important to ensure that your reserving practices are strong to take into account these things. Similarly, on motor, cars not running is a boon from an insurance standpoint because you don't get claims. India, 88% of the accidents which happen in India are road accidents. So that is the amount of claims an insurance company gets because of car damages, because of people getting injured, motor third-party claims, all those things. For the last 2.5 months, there are virtually no claims reported. But as you open the lockdown, you will have smaller claims: battery not starting, rodent bite, engine not starting, certain damage to the car. All those things will keep on piling up. So it is still uncertain times, very less data. It remains to be seen what happens. But from our ballpark expectation is that we still will, from a motor portfolio, end up with a benefit because of this no claims for a considerable amount of time. Having said that, the exposure might suddenly increase on roads because people will prefer to drive their own cars and not use carpooling as a means of transport. So there are benefits, there are problems, but too early to say in terms of data as to what will happen. The expectation is that we'll come out of it slightly better and wiser. As Alok said, there are COVID-specific products. I mean, you have COVID-only policy. You have indemnity policy, you have a benefit policy, which means that if you are diagnosed positive of COVID, you get a certain lump sum amount. Now, these products, though pretty good, do not offer much of an advantage if you have a health insurance policy, because anyway COVID was covered from that standpoint. The regulators have come out with the interpretation of the regulation, which says that both life insurance companies and GI companies are covering it, and they have to service claims, and nobody can invoke clauses which are there in the contract which disallows them to pay claims. Having said that, there is a scope for this market to slightly be more mature in terms of the allied the secondary and tertiary impacts of COVID. So what I mean by that is, let's take a typical example of a business interruption cover. Now, business interruption cover in India is only offered with a fire policy, which means that if you have a claim on the fire, which is the insured peril, only then the business interruption cover is triggered. Typically, what has happened during the COVID times is the offices are not working, they are inhabitable, but there is no insured peril against which the claim can be made. And for that reason, nobody can take a BI cover. Now, in slightly developed markets, BI is sometimes sold independently as well. So do we look at those products from an independent perspective? The challenge remains in India that there is very less data available. People have not priced for it. So giving claims does not seem the right decision to make. So interesting times ahead. Another cover which has been widely discussed is loss of job. Now, loss of job, as far as I have seen, comes with a loan policy in India. So if you have a loan and you lose a job, and that is predominantly covering the financial institution rather than the person. So basically what it does is that you have a loss of job cover. If you lose a job and can't make a payment on the loan, that is when it is covered. So who benefits from it? It is not the insured, but the financial institution who owes the loan, because the EMIs won't be paid because of the loss. So product structures need to be thought through. They need to be slightly more granular, and they should target the need. I read online yesterday that one company has come out with a multi car insurance policy as well, which means that if you have 3 cars, you have 1 insurance policy. Now, in India, what used to happen in motor is that the asset was insured and the person wasn't. World over, the person is insured through the asset. So again, the regulator, the insurance companies need to lobby hard and see what product structures and product benefit structures are viable and actually benefit the customer as well as the insurance company from a pricing perspective. It is likely that these products are going to be expensive. Because of lack of data and because of a recency bias in terms of pricing the pandemic. So that remains a problem. Over a period of time, maybe as volume increases and pooling of risk becomes much more prominent, you can have insurance premiums reducing, more distribution coming in, more geographical spread. All those things might happen, but it will take some time for it to happen. So this is typically from a product profitability side. I have not seen so far insurance companies scratching their heads and trying to reprice products left, right, and center. They are taking things the way they come one day at a time, trying to analyze the experience, trying to see what is the best fit, trying to see whether they can reduce health, sell more motor. All those sorts of considerations are happening as we speak, and so that portfolio optimization takes place, expense optimization takes place, and ultimately the shareholders are happy.
Sure, Rohit. I think, great insights on that. Just wanted to check, would you want to move to full screen for this one?
Yeah, sure. Is it better?
Okay, sure.
Yeah. So I remember sitting in the office in around February time, and this COVID was still. We had only 3 cases in India. Today we have more than 1 lakh cases, and that was the time when we decided as a group that we need to redraw our business plans. Now, at that time, the impact was extremely uncertain, but one thing was very clear, that the world over, there were lockdowns being announced. And if it happens in India, the first big hit is going to come from motor, which is the predominant line of business. So most of the companies anticipated that, started ramping up. If you see on all the web aggregators or all the insurance companies' websites, there is a surge of traffic up to 40-50% only for inquiries on health. So the health premiums are expected to spike by around 40-50%. What happens to the loss ratio remains to be seen, because COVID is covered. It cannot be treated as of now as a pre-existing disease. What happens to the cost also needs to be seen, whether at the time of selling the policy, whether the insurance companies are going to initiate a COVID test. Remains to be seen. It's too early to call. The COVID tests are costly. It's about 4,500 rupees per person. So who is going to absorb that cost on an insurance premium of 7,500, 8,000? So as of now, the policies are being sold. PED is covered. All the benefits are covered. And that is why it is expected to have an impact on the loss ratios. So because of this, most of the companies are redrawing their business plans, both from a top line and a bottom line perspective. This year might suddenly look better because the claims might get delayed or pushed probably to the next year. But on a 2-year basis or a 3-year basis, or maybe a slightly longer term basis, you might see a kind of an adverse impact. You might see a change in behavior. From a life insurance perspective, the yields, the economic downturn, the stock market hit is going to have an impact on the fund management charges, which form a significant portion of their revenue. And the embedded values, all of these are going to take a hit. Also, with the yields going down, though loans are going to be cheaper, the investment income the insurance companies are going to earn is also going to be a problem. But the bigger problem which most of the insurance companies are gearing towards is actually on the claim side. A faster settlement of claims, B servicing claims from a remote location, from virtual connects, and 3, a sudden surge of claims post the lockdown. So you need to have adequate manpower in those specific locations as well to service those claims. So business plans are redrawn, hirings are redrawn, claims teams are getting a bump up in terms of the number of people. The technology which is deployed, everybody is mostly investing in virtual claim settlement, RPA modules, AI integrations, and all those sorts of things. And from a technology perspective, I'm pretty sure, and Irvinder will touch on it in much more detail, but I'm pretty sure that we will be by the end of this in a much advanced and much better place. So, considering I am an actuary, the first thought of all of this is what is the reserving impact, because that's what we are the guardians of predominantly. As of now, from what we have seen in March, April, and bit of May, hardly any claims. But to pass on to that benefit in terms of a reduction of reserves will be slightly immature. At least 12 months, 6 to 12 months will go in analyzing the impact. Likely there would be a deterioration in terms of the health portfolio, a slight benefit in terms of a motor portfolio. Overall, we might land up somewhere where we are currently or slightly worse off. The bigger challenges in terms of reinsurances is that pandemics are exclusions. So whatever claims you pay on these pandemics are on your book. You don't get any reinsurance support for it. And that brings to the bigger problem as to whether pandemic should be covered by reinsurances, because they aggregate risks at a global level and not just at an insurer or a country. So the recommendations have been provided. Certain reinsurers are coming up with innovative products, innovative strategies to manage this, and that seems to be pretty interesting and working. Most of the insurance companies are looking at it. Also, valuations are going to take a hit. And they are going to take a significant hit. So valuations will take a hit, reduction in FMCs, reduction in yields. All of this are going to ultimately impact the shareholder profitability and the valuations. But over a longer period of time, we are going to come out of this in a good manner. The insurance industry is going to pick up. The insurance penetration has to increase. And so ultimately, we'll all benefit from this experience in the future as well.
Sure. Thanks, Rohit. I think one of the interesting things that was always stuck in my head from an actuarial perspective was also the fact that whether we can afford to cover pandemics or not. There's a reason why Act of God is largely not covered in insurance policies, and that's the exact question that I had in my mind. I'll quickly move on to Nikhil. Before I do that, there's a poll question that I want to put to the audience that will sort of set the context for the distribution discussion. You guys can vote on it. I'll give you guys some 5-7 seconds to give your answers, and then we can go through the response as well.
So the poll question is, will traditional distribution channels, bancassurance and agency, have a reduced role to play in the future? Answer can be yes, they will become more significant in terms of digital businesses. No, traditional distribution channels will continue to hold ground. Or traditional distribution will be significant, but with more tech enablers. So we have about half of you who have voted. We'll just leave it running for about 10 seconds more, and then we will close the poll from there. We have a clear winner. So keen to share the result. Okay, I'll just run for 5 more seconds. If you haven't already submitted your question, please put it in the Q&A box. We already have 13 questions. So otherwise, you can go in and upvote questions as well. I think a lot of you are quite active there, so thanks for that. We'll end the polling now. And here are the results. So a clear winner with 70% of you saying that traditional distribution will be significant, but with more tech enablers. Look, what do you think?
So I think, pretty much bang on, and I'm sure Nikhil will share a much more deeper insight into it. Again, all of us from the insurance industry, we know how important the traditional distribution channels are for us. Distribution, the traditional part is always being questioned. You always have the push coming in from online and digital. What's going to be very interesting to see is where does the traditional distribution channel stand rather in a post-COVID world? And the online business or the digital business, which has sort of always been at the back end, will it eventually come out of the cocoon and be a front runner in any way? So Nikhil, on to you.
Thanks everyone, and very good evening to everybody on the call. First and foremost, I wish all the participants on the call all the health and safety and being at home. I also want to thank Team Michael Page for putting this together, very short notice, an opportunity for providing me to speak to everybody on this, as well as interact with my fellow colleague panel members. I'm looking forward to this interaction and useful 1.5 hour where we think and talk about ideas. Just one small disclaimer, all the content and views that I share here today are my own and not necessarily related to either a company that I currently work for or the past organizations that I have. Very quickly, I am just going to share my screen as well. And then we'll go through what I have just put together. Just give me a second. Oops, sorry. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so insurance for all of us, I think, we always talk about insurance is all about risk selection. It's about managing uncertainties. It's like Rohit just spoke about, which is working with data and trying to create and trying to work on informed decisions. But is that really so? Who would have known that, the industry that was going off well for 11 months, and like we've seen, 14% growth, and this is all India information. So I'm assuming that large amount of our participants today are joining us from India for this. 14% growth on non-life business, 22% growth on private life insurers. And guess what? Suddenly you get hit by the COVID impact. And in March, no pun intended, we aren't marching, we're actually squatting, right? So a 32% decline in growth year on year is never heard of, really. I mean, at least in my 20 years, in a March business, and March typically contributes, most of our insurance professionals here, typically contributes at least, about 35 to 40 odd percent of the 30% of the business overall for the annual period. We also know that on an annual basis this year, perhaps the industry is largely going to be flat, and it's perhaps just going to be there or thereabouts. And I was reading up the Lloyd's Insurance research that the insurance companies are actually going to perhaps have a loss of close to $107 billion in claims that are going to come up. The other part that's interesting, and I think Rohit touched upon it a little earlier, is that we've already seen claims now. So we are seeing close to, we've seen not too many, of course. We've seen about 1,520 claims. We've also seen that 2/3 of those have got paid. Amount is not too large, it's about 30 odd crores. But this is just early days in the pandemic. And this is early days on reinsurers and early days on in terms of how the estimates go forward here again. Again, the number of claims that have been seen is largely in metros, like the case is as far as the number of cases as well. Now, what does this do to the economy? We've seen economy shrinking. We've seen economy at close to about 3% degrowth, which is quite stark. We've also seen unemployment figures in case of April at 26%, and which was 6.7% in March. And we've been seeing all sorts of news. I read somewhere today that one company interviewed 2,000 people, or rather, I would say, asked 2,000 people to go via WhatsApp. So it's a time where there is uncertainty, and when there is uncertainty, people want to delay purchases in most cases. What happens with uncertainty is also change in perspectives, and that's where we are here. So the customers change perspectives. What we have seen in the last couple of months, at least in the business that we run, what I'm running, is there has been a significant demand in life and health insurance, where customers are coming out and reaching out and asking for these products. Consequently, we've also seen a little bit of softer, or rather I would say demand on longer pay products which require commitment, and products which are linked to the marketplace. Needless to say, and that's intuitive because the markets haven't really performed that well. We've also seen big organizations have actually made unprecedented decisions. I mean, one very recently was Franklin Templeton, which actually took upon 6 of its funds and sort of put into a lock-in for a debt fund that too. We've also seen other impacts. We've seen low COVID products being put out in the market, 300-400 rupee products offering cover, which actually serve as a door opener for insurance companies and distributors to go out there and speak to customers and try and sell something else. Needless to say, we've seen innovative underwriting of telemedicals and video medicals being done on the phone, through the video, just like how we are interacting today, where doctors interact with customers and take it forward. Needless to say, because lockdown situations don't permit for medicals to be done. We're also seeing that on customers and documentation, most of it now is actually online and does not require actual physical paper, but can be done through eKYC and through other modes where you don't require paper at all. Now, with changed perspectives, yes, we've established that there is a situation. There's a situation where customers are a little uncertain. The perspectives are different. How do we reach out to these customers, right? And here is a slide which I think is fairly powerful. Just bear with me on it, but I just want to go with a hypothesis here, and I want to just share some data and information. According to me, InsurTech distribution is the only way. And it also proves the point of just what we did as a poll, which is 70 odd percent still saying that physical is actually the way forward. The way I see it is, it has to go hand in hand. And here is where I'm coming from. For the longest time, most of us who've been in insurance for now close to almost 1.5 decades or close to 2. The reason why multiple insurers are actually in India today, I think there's not a single name of a global insurer who's not in India, is because of 2 reasons, right? 1, the insurance to GDP penetration is extremely low. 2, there is a huge opportunity and an educated base of customers. But how do you reach them? How do you reach out to those customers in a cost-effective manner? And here is where I want to spend some time. The opportunity that I see is today a golden opportunity wherein, let's look at this. In rural India, 227 million rural internet users actually are 10% more than the urban users. We're actually seeing smartphones to the cost of like $100 phone, which is a 5,000 rupee or perhaps $80 phone, actually growing at 18% in rural India. We're seeing transactions grow significantly across in digital formats and customers ready to engage on digital platforms. A digital payment company like PhonePe, for example, DigiPay company, actually is seeing 55% of its transactions only being done through rural environments. And pre-COVID starting, 20% of the health insurance actually was selling in rural India. To me, this tells me that the rural population or the Tier 2, Tier 3 population customers who perhaps were not being able to be reached out in an efficient way, now the door opens. Do we have technology? Of course we have. Do we have bandwidth? Yes, we have the bandwidth. Do we have gadgets where they can reach out and consume this? Yes, they can. The distribution way forward, and again coming back to the 70% that we talked about, and here is exactly what I put it. 24% now today are happy to buy products on digital formats and through means which are through their own convenience. That talks exactly to what the poll question that we did 5 minutes ago, that people still want perhaps the physical touch, but the whole word of phygital is today a new norm, and the traditional models will never sort of go away, but InsurTech and digital and phygital are norms here to stay. Consumers are willing, 80% of them are willing now to engage with insurance companies on these digital parameters and take it forward. Many customers actually, imposed on, actually prefer an environment. Think about it. I come from an environment where, from a bank where only insurance was sold, where RMs meeting customers face to face. Is that possible today? It's not. I mean, would I want to meet an RM right now in my house to come across and give me some solutions on insurance? Perhaps not. Am I happy to do this over the phone or over the digital environment? Yes, I am. So I'm happy to sort of engage on that front as well. Let's look at some other points. I think in terms of virtual assistants, in terms of what investments are going through, we have seen a 3.1 billion as an investment coming through as far as InsurTech investments are concerned, which is actually double that it was just the year ahead in 2017. That brings me to the point that if you have the propositions, we have the technology, we have how to go about doing it, but where do we reach the customers? Well, we reach the customers at their home because that's where they are. Remote working and staying from home is here for good. Where are we going to get these customers? Are at their residence, at their own places, at their time of comfort. Working from home is a new norm. Here are a few examples. I just put in a couple of examples of, say, for example, TCS, which has actually asked only 25% of their employees to actually come to work by 2025. Or for that matter, digital payments. 42% of the percentage of users have increased their digital payments in the last 2 months. Mobile wallets, digital sales, you have it. Digital sales of, for example, the largest aggregator in India, Policybazaar, has actually jumped up 35% in health insurance and 20% in life insurance in the last 2 months. Now, these are signs that we are getting that customers want to engage with people digitally. Chatbots are also up 50%. So we've seen it. Now, is this going to change tomorrow? Perhaps not. The pandemic is here to stay. The vaccine is not yet out. Once the vaccine is out, it will still take 6 to 8 months of testing and perhaps then putting it together. So where is the silver line? The silver line, according to me, is that in every low, there is a high. And I've just put in a quick slide here to tell you, in the last 20 years, the quarterly GDP growth of the world, right? And look at two specific points, and most of us would have gone through these specific points, which is the global recession of 2001 and the stock market crash of 2008. And what I want you to look at is, there were some companies who did not even exist before these points. They came in, perhaps you may say arguably cost of funds were better, cheaper. They came in and they tried to get the customers hooked onto a new behavior completely. According to me, for instance, if someone would have said in the 1990s that you put your personal stuff onto an internet for people to see, I wouldn't think anyone would believe that. But Instagram does that, right? Or for that matter, SMS is done to death. It is now all about WhatsApp or calling or mobility through Uber. And that's what I think Rohit mentioned about car sales not going up as well. One is pandemic, but it was also struggling even before that, because the car sales weren't happening because people are actually more sort of used to now just Ubering it. What is really changing, according to me, is the fundamental change in consumption patterns. And this time is no different. The way I see it is, any company who can stitch up a good proposition at a low price, reach a customer at the customer's own convenience, and offer customized bespoke solutions and service is going to be the winner. So for me, that's the silver line. Every crisis actually is an opportunity. So just to close up on this, just some quick points as I see it. The 6 takeaways that I would want all of the people attending the webinar here today is, are we seeing shift in consumer behavior? Yes. Insurance is becoming a pull product. Can you believe that? I mean, till now, insurance was always a push product. I certainly believe that insurance is now a pull product. Customers are asking for it. Tech is going to spearhead the growth. Leveraging the tier 2, tier 3 markets is paramount. Working from home is a new norm, and in crisis is an opportunity. I personally believe we are at an inflection point, and any organization or an idea that can be stitched up well and taken to customers will be the winning formula. Thank you very much. Alok, over to you.
Sure. Thanks, Nikhil. I think the biggest takeaway for me is that insurance has finally become a pull product. I believe before COVID, health insurance was the only category that was slowly marching towards it. But now we see a general positivity about the complete insurance business on a whole. As a recruiter, I would definitely want the traditional distribution channels to be alive and running. They are one of the biggest manpower holders within the insurance industry, and I would definitely want them to exist. My 2 cents on it, from a practical point of view, to everyone here and to Nikhil as well, I do believe that the days of quality telecallers are going to be back. We will have the likes of Citibank and Stancy quality telecallers popping up, coming back to the insurance industry again, because that is something that's sort of becoming the norm now, wherein you need people to be able to close on the phone, not only from a product technicality point of view, but also from overall selling capability. Before I pass on the buck to Irvinder, there's a quick poll question that I would want to point to the audience. Again, a very interesting factor that determines our behavior here. I'll give you guys 5-10 seconds to quickly answer this one.
Yep. So the question for this is, post-COVID-19, do you as a customer feel more positive towards buying any insurance product online? Options are yes, I prefer buying it online now, or no, insurance is a complicated product and needs explanation. Or the last option is traditional distribution, will be significant but with more technology enabled. I think that was from a previous question, sorry. So you can just either choose yes or no. Okay, I'm going to let it run for a couple more seconds. We have a lot of participation in Q&A already. So thank you all for submitting your questions. When we move into Q&A, the Q&A section, we will be able to answer some of them for sure. I end the polling now. And here are the results.
Got it. Sure. Great. Thanks, Sophia. These are definitely encouraging trends as far as the implications on digital analytics and technology is concerned. We do see people who want to go and buy products online. Passing it on to Irvinder. Irvinder, I'm sure that, coming from the consulting background, you have a very strong 360-degree view of what's happening in the complete insurance industry. We've often heard organizations talking about AI, ML, and we've seen them making investments as well. However, what I wanted to get your perspective on is, do you see technology moving from an enabler to the forefront and having a strong impact on every element of the business? Over to you, Irvinder.
Okay, thank you, Alok. I think first of all, I would like to thank Michael Page for inviting us and inviting all of us. In fact, it's such a great panel, and totally all kind of people are involved in this panel. I think that makes this panel more interesting. I think Alok and I think everybody, I think what I picked up from last two speakers is, what are we changing? What is the kind of change we are living today? If you look at, COVID has brought in a humongous amount of human change. We are living a behavior change today with the COVID times. I hope none of you would have imagined being at home for 30, 40, 50, 60 days and ordering almost everything online, isn't it? Who would have actually imagined that? But now we are doing this, and we are not doing this as an individual. So we are not actually buying an individual cinema ticket. We are actually buying our groceries, our consumptions, our family requirements, essentials, non-essentials. Everything is happening at home. The other trend which is coming on is a lot of data is going on. We are sharing a lot of information. We are actually sharing what we are making every day. There are a lot of cooks around, isn't it? So now think about, what are we generating? If you just take a step back and see, what are we generating? We are generating so much of data which can be used. So I think the COVID times, with the change of this behavior, is actually generating a lot of data which can be really useful. So I will just go on and share my slides. Just give me a second. So that's what I was talking about. There is a huge amount of shift in individuals' behavior and the behavior of the people, which is taking us to generate a lot of data. Now, I totally agree with what Nikhil said before this. And in fact, each of these companies have a lot of digital assets. They have a lot of analytics engines running. They have AI engines running. The issue was the human behavior. We were not generating data. And because of the lack of data, we were not able to actually drive results and drive outcomes which can give us value on what we are trying to produce, right? So with all of this, the effective data we are generating, I think we are giving a lot of power to our digital capabilities. We are giving a lot of power to our analytics engines which can run more effectively. We are giving a lot of insights to our artificial engines which are there in these companies, and they really can do a lot better results. So how can this help better? So with the comprehensive data collection, we are actually getting to a level of where we have a quality data. Now, when we have a quality data, our analytics can really do well and can become a self-evolving model than being a manual model, which was the case earlier. Now, these models, because of a lot of data coming together, can be really agile and can help you make decisions which are more actionable in nature. And I will tell you in the next slide, because I will take you through the entire value chain, that how this can be more actionable. Again, coming into artificial intelligence. So artificial intelligence can help you actually personalize your product modeling. What is the kind of product which one can use? I will just give an example wherein you are actually ordering all this stuff for your home, and now you have the insurance company has your demographic data, they have your consumption data, they have your financial data. They can actually come down to actually create a personalized product for you, which is personally priced for you. And that's what everybody is looking for. People who want to buy online, they want simple, they want personalized, they want their problems to be helped out. Now, what is this doing to servicing? Right now, if you pro-COVID era, you would go and speak to a chatbot, but the chatbot would not like your language, or he will not speaking in very personal way. So now with all of this data, your AI platforms and your chatbots can be really personalized, because you would have so much of behavioral data roaming around, which you can actually map it to these bots, right? And then you can make these chatbots self-sustainable, because you would have multiple data collection happening already in your organization. Moving on, I think in the next slide, I've compared how the traditional approach was, which I think every one of us would know. So I would not concentrate on that. I would rather concentrate on the makeshift event which we are living today. So what I try to do here is I've tried to actually bring out all the elements of the value chain together, which is distribution, product, underwriting, servicing, claims, and risk management. Now, how would having more data and using your assets better can help? Nikhil asked a very good question. In fact, we did a polling around it. Everyone relies on these agents, these brokers, these bancassurance partners, because they know the customers best. What was not happening earlier, the insurance companies were not enabling them in a way that they should know their customers in a more technical way, where they can be pitched the right product at the right price. See, end of the day, it's about right product via right channel at the right price. And that's how the customer segment is attacked. So if we have so much of data, if we can work with that data and create our analytical systems better and backed by the digital handling at the shop floor, we can actually help them give more information, which can be a personalized OTC product, over-the-counter product, wherein the offerings are very similar to what this guy is looking for. The pricing is very personalized. So maybe some people have a cash flow issue, so you can give them a different option. And it's not that they have to ask for it. You're giving them upfront, and that's how you make it absolutely pure play, wherein they are thinking that this guy understands my need. This guy knows what I'm talking about. This guy is not pitching me a 1 crore product. He's telling me to buy 50 lakhs because that's my need. And that's how you have to get this guy on board. The second part of this is absolutely the next tomorrow post-COVID is a pure play digital insurance world. Though we have around 20 plus companies which may be not really digital, but they have to slowly move towards the digital piece, because else they would feel a Nokia moment. and that's what nobody would want, right? And to do all of this, they have to consume this situation as an opportunity and start working around getting sense of what digital assets they have and what are the analytical assets they have. How can they bring in more ROI of those assets by using this data intelligently? Moving on to product and underwriting, I think there have been examples given by other speakers, but I think the key here is, because we are Indians and this domestic market is very price conscious, you need to come to a point using this data where you can make the tailor-made requirement product more price personalized. If you make it more price personalized, you will be able to offer a better deal to a buyer. Secondly, I think it's the time of bundling, pricing, cross-selling, upselling. I think you need to figure out what is the base you have. How can you study that base much better? Whose data is anyways available in the globe right now. He's generating the base. I'm having insurance policy of at least 3 insurance companies, and my digital data is available, right, to do social media analytics. So how can you use your own base and do a social media analytics over it and actually offer a bundling product or a cross-sell product to this individual? And I think that's where the intelligent underwriting models come into play. I think tomorrow is about intelligent pricing, intelligent underwriting models, and focus on what your customer segment need is. I think that's where the pricing and underwriting is going. Servicing and operations, I think we all know we are living in an era of, don't touch me not era. It's a touch-free service scenario today. I think the servicing and operations should get back to basics. I think they should talk about having things more seamless and self-serviced, making it very simple, make it very user-friendly, get down to the core of integration, ensure that your blockchain which you put in to face your customers are highly integrated with your core, so that when you're asking a question, the bot really knows what the customer is asking for. And I think that's what servicing is. Go to basics and make it simple, user-friendly, and self-service oriented, and make it easy. I think that's what everybody wants. Nobody wants to spend time online only talking about change your address. You should be very simple. You should use something which is more personalized and integrated. Coming back to claims, I think one of the biggest opportunity the claims guys would have here is that how can you use this particular situation and integrate your core models with blockchain and get the demographics driven product in demographic driven behavior in your claim settlement. There is a lot of claim settlement processes which goes wrong because of having a manual intervention. And if you look at in today's time, as even earlier I've heard that we have to move towards working from home, and therefore having more intelligent claim system which is blockchain driven is very important. We have to eliminate, I would say we have to eliminate the term called claims processing TAT. It has to be seamless, and there has to be no timing involved into it and paper involved into it. So I think these are the key elements which will get impacted. I think my key takeaways would be accept that we are actually going through a change, and that change is a larger behavior change across, and take that as an opportunity, and understand that how can you use this opportunity more efficiently for the industry and for yourself as a company. Look inwards and benchmark your assets, benchmark your digital assets, benchmark your analytics assets, see where you stand, and actually fine tune them to ensure that you reach the customer behavior ASAP. I think that's, if you miss this time, you miss a lot of opportunity. So don't miss this opportunity. Get back to the customer behavior ASAP. Be direct on that. Don't rely on middle parties. Third is, which is I think most important, conduct a skill capability gap analysis in your organization. Understand, do you have that skill to run your digital assets? Do you have that skill to run your analytics assets? Do you really have that particular type of people already there? If you're not, I think go ahead, hire these people. This is good time to invest on skill gap, on capability gap within your organization, because in future you need these people. So I think I would leave it at that. I think that's where we are heading towards.
Sure, thanks a lot, Arvinder. I think I'll pick up on your last point, which is basically focusing on the skill gap analysis or the capability gap analysis. We're seeing a very, very strong trend within insurance, wherein it's opening up to other industries. It's basically industry agnostic as far as hiring within the analytics or the digital function is considered. And it's great that we have had people who've come in from other industries and joined the insurance segment to basically focus and build up the digital and the analytics asset for our industry here. I'll quickly move to Amol. And I am a firm believer that more than anything else, insurance is the business of honoring claims. As one of the most critical functions in the business, the impact of this pandemic is not only from a business perspective, but also from a process point of view. Again, Amol, as someone who has seen the Indian market and the international markets, how do you see the situation impacting the claims function? And also, if you could help us with your learnings for when you've been managing Singapore and Hong Kong, and anything that the Indian market can learn from them.
Absolutely, Alok. Thank you very much. Thanks to you, Sophia, and the whole Page team. I think the session has been very immense learning to me, and I'm sure to other participants. And to answer your question, I'll come to that, but I really want to pick one or two points which came from Rohit, Nikhil, and Irvinder. And I think that sets the context for what I wanted to talk about today in next 10 minutes. Rohit, I remember mentioned that the highest investment any insurance player today doing is into claims. because that is a function where you're going to need maximum help, either in technology or in process. Also, Nikhil said that insurance as an industry is at a cusp of a big change, right? He gave an example of 2001. He gave example of crisis before that. And I think we are at a cusp of change, but at a positive change. I firmly believe that we are at a point where there is a big opportunity that lies before insurers, and those players who will be able to take it up are going to make a big value proposition change for themselves in the market. I also wanted to point out what Arvinder said, and that's actually the basis of all the changes that will come into the future. The behavioral change that is happening already with customers, right? And I'll give you a comparison with China and India in terms of claims process, right? In China, there are some players who are doing a complete paperless and humanless claim processing for motor damage, and 30% of their claims are being processed without any human intervention. Now, there is a detailing to the process, but the reason they have been able to implement that is because the human behavior or the customer behavior in China is very adaptive. That was probably not the case in India and even markets like Singapore. I mean, we might think Singapore is a very advanced market, but in terms of customer behavior, it's more traditional than probably Indians. So, but that is changing, and that is setting a tone for the changes that we can now bring in. And it's in claims or in service functions, right? But I'm a firm believer we are at a junction where we have a big opportunity. And in fact, I would want to ask the participants. I mean, I would want to run the poll and see what participants think, and then I'll jump into my slide quickly.
Sure, Amol. So the question is, how many of you think COVID-19 provides an opportunity in the long term for insurers? So you can either answer yes, it creates a long-term opportunity, or no. A few of you have already voted, so those of you who haven't, please take the next 5 to 8 seconds to do so, and then we'll close the poll right after. All right, majority of you have voted. I think we have a very clear answer. Oh, here you go.
Absolutely, yes. Oh, yeah. And honestly, everybody is bang on right about this, right? But then how do we use this as an opportunity? What is the approach that the insurers have to take? And I'm going to spend next 10 minutes, and this being a last session, I'm going to spend time on giving my thoughts on how the companies can use this as an opportunity. Let me just share my screen and then probably talk about it. So obviously in a short term, we are going to see there is a pain that in the insurance industry will go through, but how does it turn into a long-term opportunity is what I'm going to talk about. Now, the framework I'm using is something which a few of my previous colleagues have created, but obviously I put in my thoughts onto the framework. So this is a McKinsey framework. It's a public document which is available on internet, and this lays down basically how companies can respond and turn it into an opportunity. Obviously, the very first step is to, March 23rd in India, lockdown got announced. Nobody knew how to react. Employees couldn't reach the office. Customers didn't know whom to reach. And it was a complicated situation. It was not only in India, but also in most of the Asia. So the first thing, obviously, the companies needed to do, and most of them have done, is to resolve the situation, right? And the key here is to not create some fancy strategy, but to react very quickly and react to employees, react to customers. I'll give you examples. There are some players, Western and Southeast Asian, who had outsourced operations in India, and they had to organize 10,000 plus laptops overnight because most of their employees in captive units in India had desktops and they could not work from home. And there is no option of not working for a day for an insurance conglomerate who's spread into 30 or 40 countries, right? So this was a nightmare. This was a logistical nightmare. A lot of companies have been able to respond to this very quickly. Imagine buying 10,000 laptops in a market, making them ready to use, making sure your data is protected, making sure it reaches the employees and they can use it. in a situation where everything is locked down. I mean, you cannot even get a car to transport, forget a truck. But this has been the first step that most companies have already taken so far, and some companies I know in India are into this phase. So they are still making, they have prioritized their employees who needs to have the access, and they are still making them enable them to work from home. But the next and more critical step to me is, and this is the step where people can turn a lot of challenges into opportunity, is showing the resilience. How do the companies jump back and bring at least the basic functionalities into the market? Now, this is a phase where companies need to focus and try to streamline their processes. We did talk, and Irvinder did highlight on how claims can change, how Nikhil did highlight how distributions can change. And I'll give you some examples which show that the opportunity is created in this situation. Now, a lot of us know that claims is a function where, every penny is counted, right? And there is a big negotiation that happens with the OEMs, with the garages, with the service provider. Now, Hong Kong had a very, very peculiar situation before COVID. One of the most premium OEM or a car manufacturer there never believed in repairing the parts. If there is an accident, if there is a scratch on the car, change the part was the only policy they followed. Now, obviously, this meant very high claim value because for a scratch, you're changing a bonnet of a car. Now, come COVID situation, the supply chain is so damaged. They are open to repairing the parts instead of changing it unless absolutely required. Now, this is a 20-30 percentage point savings on a claim value or a severity. Now, this is a starting point. This is a foot in the door for insurance companies. If this is happening now, it can happen in future. And these are the opportunities which companies need to pick up, and some of them have started picking up. I mean, obviously, there was always a remote appraisal that was happening. There was a photo-based appraisal that was happening in India, in Singapore, in China. But what was the ratio of the remote appraisal to a physical appraisal? In India, it was hardly 10%. Now, last 2 months, there are obviously very, very low volume of claims. Like I know few companies who are getting 10% of the actual claim volume. But most of those 10% are now happening remotely, right? The assessment is happening remotely, the negotiations are happening remotely, and the approvals are happening remotely. And that is 100% of the current volume. If we can do that now, can we do it in the future? Obviously, yes. The answer is yes. It's just that you need to have that behavioral change that we talked about before. The companies who will show this kind of resilience will be able to return to market very quickly and will be able to return with a very scalable solutions. And that's basically the focus that companies need to have if they really want to kind of create the impact and create new value proposition in the market. Now, what do I mean by return? It doesn't mean that you return back to pre-crisis area, but return with the new processes, new technologies, and new ways of working. Force the market, force the intermediaries, force the vendors to behave in the new ways is a return that I mean by this. If you are able to do that, and if the companies are able to pull this through, I'm not saying 100% of the companies will, but the leaders will. And if the leaders do, they will be able to create a completely reimagined insurance bottom line processes. And if they are able to do that, I'm sure there will be big changes that Irvinder talked about using technology. Now, one of the example I gave earlier was China, right? China has been able to implement artificial intelligence based solution which processes claims without any human intervention. You meet with an accident, you go to the app, you click the photos or a video of your car, you submit it. The AI is capable enough to assess the damage and provide you with the value that can be refunded to you immediately. If the customer chooses not to, he can obviously go back and fall back to the traditional ways of settlement of claims. But otherwise, the system is already capable of offering you at least a claim value. Now, this is something which is already picking up. I know at least 2-3 top players in P&C industries who have started piloting this solution even in India. I think that is a complete reimagination of the process. And this is not only for motor, for ANH. I know a company now who has started building the direct integration with the hospital networks. What I mean by that, if a customer goes and admits himself in the hospital, the bill gets created. There is no physical copy or a scanned copy that needs to be sent. Insurance company is integrated with the hospital billing system. They know that their customer is admitted. This is the bill value. This is the bill copy. They can adjudicate the bill and provide the value to the customer and to the hospital immediately. Imagine what Irvinder talked about, eliminating the TAT completely. There is no TAT in question. You get admitted, we know you're admitted, we know what is your bill, we know what is your treatment. We can intervene in the treatment and tell you that don't go for this treatment, but go for something alternative, optimize the cost, and that to me is complete reimagination of process. So there is an opportunity. A lot of companies are picking up. The companies that will be able to establish this will be able to create a completely new value proposition in the market. To me, that is a complete reform of the industry, because the top 3 players do it. Eventually in next 5 years, there will be early adopters, and eventually then after that, everybody else will follow this. And that brings us to the last mile, which is ongoing. I mean, reform is something that is not you will do once, but you will do again and again and again. There is the crisis today, there will be crisis in next decade and probably a decade after that. But this is something that will go on. I think this is the way, this is the approach that will revolve itself, will help companies to transform. So that's more or less what I have. I have shared few examples because I wanted to bring more practical knowledge into this, but happy to answer more questions.
Thanks a lot, Amol, for taking us through. I think the general summation, or a couple of general summations, basically, and when I sort of collate all your responses, is that customer centricity is obviously going to be redefined in the post-COVID era. At the same time, everyone in different facets sees this as a very, very strong opportunity for the insurance industry. So thank you, Amol, Irvinder, Nikhil, and Rohit, for giving us these insights. I'm sure all of us have added to our knowledge and understanding of the situation. And I'm also sure, and I'm already seeing it, this has also added a lot of questions in people's mind. So I'll pass on the baton to my colleague Stuti. She will take us through the very interesting Q&A part. Stuti, over to you.
Thanks, Alok, and all the panelists for such an insightful talk. So before we move on to the Q&A, I would like to quote a famous quote by a philosopher, Euripides, who said, "Question everything, learn something, and answer nothing." But we are going to rephrase this in the current context, where we are going to learn something, question everything, and answer up to the best potential in the limit of the current times. So before we go and shoot the questions to our panelists, we have a quick insurance trivia, which is open for the esteemed insurance fraternity out there on the other side of it. And I would like to pass on this question. The question says, which is the first Indian, which insurance company sponsored the 1983 Cricket World Cup? Quick hint, there are 2 companies by this name. One is in US and the other is in UK. They sponsored...
I was trying to say whether the panelists can answer these questions as well.
No, you can't.
Okay, we'll let it run for a couple more seconds. About half of you have voted, so if you haven't, just put in your vote now. Seem to have a clear answer. I'm not sure if that's the right answer, so let's see. I'll wrap the polling now. Suti, you can let us know if everyone answered it correctly.
Yes, it's right. It's Prudential. So in 1975, when England started the World Cup, Prudential was the top-notch company which sponsored it for first 3 World Cups, and then it was taken by our home-owned country, Reliance. Next question, which is taking us much before this era, which is the first Indian life insurance company to be set up in India. Quick hint, it was started in 1870. I think this will be much more tricky.
Yes, the answers are a lot more evenly split this time.
Yeah.
We still have a bit of a winner, so let's see. A couple more seconds for those of you who haven't voted yet. Right, I have no idea on this one, so I'll pass it over to you, Stuti.
Yeah, we have a winner. It's Mumbai Mutual Life Insurance. Oriental Life Insurance was started by a European firm in India only, and Triton Insurance Company was the first GI Indian company to be started in 1850. So I think we have a much more aware audience. Okay, great. So now let's pass on the Q&A baton to our esteemed panelists. Before we move on to the most popular questions, I have my personal favorite and I would like to start with that one. I think that's very interesting as well. So the question is between regulation versus development battle, which goes on in insurance. Of course, we have IRDA, who keeps a capping on every development which insurance companies wants to take. We have sandbox regulations by IRDA, wherein insurance companies can tweak the products. I would want the panelists to throw some light on this respect. So, Nikhil, can you give us a indication? How do we see the regulation versus the development battle with insurance companies?
Well, it's a very interesting question, and there are no right answers to be honest. But what and some of us have been in the insurance space now long enough. I think the pace at which the regulator is supporting the industry and the engagement that the regulator is having with the industry is phenomenal. I think I was impressed to see the sandbox ideas that came out so quickly. I think quite a few insurance companies got a few mandates to work on those products. A very short time was given from that point of view. Pay as you go as an insurance for health, for motor. All of that is coming through. My sense is, and I'm just going to take a little bit of a detour here, but my sense is even in life insurance, right? I think this is really, to me, is going to be an opposite U curve on incident rates as well, because initially, because of COVID, etc., you will have some mortality, instances go up. But fundamentally, people are operating more now, and they're more time and space. So eventually, the incidents are going to go down. So it's actually going to be not a linear curve. It's going to be it's going to be a sort of inverted curve. So I think all of these instances are going to make a big difference. To answer your question specifically, saying which one is more important, my sense is, I'm going to try and answer like a diplomat, that it has to go hand in hand. That's why the regulators are there. Why the regulators are there. But the idea about file and use and not file and approve is something that I personally believe in, because the regulator needs to essentially provide a framework, is essentially provide a platform where the customers are not sort of given a raw deal, and provide an environment where ideas and innovation are rewarded by way of either pricing it differently, by way of creating specific benefits for customers. Long enough, the whole idea about, you cannot add something on to an insurance product, I think the time has come for something of that to be relooked at, because and health insurance companies are doing so. So I know Irvinder is nodding his head. Obviously, when Irvinder was a part of Max at some point, and I know him since then, I think that was one company which started doing stuff of sort of providing wearables and stuff with products has been sold. So I think innovation, unless it's rewarded, where the insurance companies can price right and ensure it helps both the bottom line and customer service, I think that's how it can go hand in hand. It cannot be just one or the other. Framework is there, platform is there, and ideas are being sort of taken forth. So that's my long answer to your short question, but it has to go hand in hand is my sense. And somewhere down the road, there will be mistakes that the industry makes, like we made initially in the initial part of the days, where regular pay products were being sold as single pay products, or for that matter on the life side, or high front-loaded charge products, sort of were getting sold. We learned on its way. We stumbled. It's a young industry after all. I mean, while you rightly mentioned, Stuti, that the insurance company first opened up way back in India, and rightly so. But after the consolidation, and frankly speaking, I mean, the real organic growth or other private companies coming in is 20-year-old. So we will learn on its way amongst us as stakeholders, which is companies, distributors, customers. So it has to be hand in hand. Thank you.
Thanks, Nikhil. I agree. I think there are so many stakeholders involved over here. So, and it's a sensitive industry. So the benefit and the viewpoint of everyone needs to be taken into consideration rather than leaning over one or the other. This brings to my next question, which is another popular one in the audience. wherein they need to get a sense how the pricing of these products are going to be impacted, specifically in the pandemic area, wherein the data is very skewed. And would the pricing be taken from the point of view the recency effect, or would larger scenarios will be taken into consideration to see how these are being done? I would also at this point mention the second point of it. Since right now the distribution is through the InsurTech platform, how are we going to see when the pricing is skewed to a higher value, how the distribution is going to be impacted? So I would like Rohit to maybe take up the first part, and then maybe we can move on to the distribution aspect.
So pricing wise, again, very less data to actually comment, but normally people don't allow for a pandemic or that sort of a cost to be included in pricing. Normally it is excluded. You expect that it's a 1 in a 100 year, 1 in a 50 year event, and you face the consequences of it and you move on, kind of. Having said that, if let's say a pandemic cover is available, and a lot of companies are scouting for that from reinsurers, then you can buy that cover and apportion the cost over the policies over that you are expecting to sell over that period of time. A valid question was on the recency effect. I don't think the products will be entirely priced with considering the recency effect into perspective. Products are priced from a much longer term perspective, a 3-year, 5-year time frame. So you have to consider that as the base. I mean, just to quote an example, after the Twin Towers attack, a lot of reinsurance companies worldwide actually dropped rates. They did not increase it, saying that event has happened now. It's unlikely that an event will happen again tomorrow. So let's reduce the prices. So that's how it typically works. The markets have their own arbitrage models to come to the right price over a period of time, and that's what will eventually happen.
Right.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Perhaps Shruti, I want to come in here as well and just add on to what Rohit mentioned, if you permit me.
Right, please.
Yeah, I think interesting aspect that Rohit mentioned, and what we are seeing in the market at this point of time is also a lot of the business, especially on the pure protection side, is reinsurance led.
Yes.
As much as it. So, for example, I know that every insurance company today has added on an extra questionnaire, a COVID questionnaire, to all the policies that come in, saying, "Listen, have you been here? Have you done that? Have you traveled, etc." So I think it's largely reinsurance led at this point of time. However, smart insurance companies are also taking innovative approaches and taking this opportunity to relook at their insurance treaties, so as it were, right? Because if the reinsurers will also be happy to work with the insurance company who says, "Okay, I'm ready to increase my retention limits a bit as well. Are you happy to play with me on trying to improve my underwriting limits?" At the same time, therefore, that gets passed on to the customer. The prices will go up in near term, but my sense is as the incidents start coming down, so we know for a fact, for instance, and Rohit being an actuary will agree with me, that the mortality rates for insurance companies are going to go up in the next 2 or 3 or 4 months. In fact, a lot of insurance companies are actually using that as an opportunity to say, "Hey, here is your time to buy the insurance product now, which is at a lower price." So I think from a product pricing standpoint, mortality rates will go up in the near term, will come back down because of market forces in long term. Reinsurance is sort of getting involved at this point of time, albeit with lesser data, and new sort of processes are coming in place at times of onboarding of customers. Thanks, Tuti.
Right. Thank you, Nikhil and Rohit, for your perspective on this. Moving on to a question on the technology front, Amit has asked, what kind of technology investment will you recommend for insurers to be better prepared? Cloud adoption to facilitate work from home, and even overall for insurance company to work? Because we have seen that face-to-face has been the traditional route for insurance companies to work on. With situation forcing us into a work from home perspective, what kind of technologies would you recommend? Vinder, would you like to take that up?
Sure. I think there will be a huge shift on the way technology is being used, designed, and utilized in any insurance company post-COVID. In fact, I keep talking to many people around. I think the days of having your own servers, own network, own technology people is absolutely going away. Everybody is interested in getting onto the cloud. So if my claims handler is sitting at home or on a vacation, he wants to access the cloud, get onto it, just get it done. I think the customer centricity and availability of services is a core area for the insurance companies today. Then expenditure happening on these server rooms and technology and all that. And I think as a country, we are really ready for it. We have AWS running, we have Google Cloud running, we have all these services available, and we have actuaries on the call. Why would you not reduce your expenses? Absolutely, you would. It will help. End of the day, it will help the policyholder, and it will bring down your premiums down, and it will make your product more competitive. I think that's how it should run. I won't go suggesting any specific product, but I think my suggestion would be, why don't you go back and look inwards and benchmark yourselves with your ambition, saying, okay, what are the 10 digital products we have, and how better we are utilizing those 10 digital products. And within those 10 digital products, because of whatever type of work we are doing on the field, have we actually utilized the ROI of that product? If not, then why don't we start doing that? I think that's the starting point. And then start benchmarking towards, the bigger giants of the world, like Lemonade, like Ping Yang, and see what they are adopting, and start bringing those technologies and innovations into your company. And I think, as Amol said, I think there will be very soon quick learners, quick starters companies, the top 5, who will actually grab this as an opportunity and actually invest into technology, invest into innovation. And that's the way forward, actually.
Right. Thanks, Irvinder. I think we have a lot of questions. We have close to 60 questions, and we have 5-7 minutes to wrap it up. So I'm going to take a couple of them, and I would like a quick view from our panelists. So next question I would like to take up is on claims. So I think in current times, the fraudulent claims are going to pick up, considering we all are working in a virtual environment. So Amol, if you can throw some light on how do we tend to tackle this situation in the current times?
Absolutely. And I think it's a very, very strong hypothesis in the market that given we will move to a remote claim processing, there will be an increase in fraudulent claim. Another reason which a lot of people compare Western experiences, whenever there has been an economic slowdown, there has been an increase in insurance fraud. So if that is the case, will we see that? The hypothesis is strong. Nobody knows if the answer is, what is going to be the reality. But there are companies who have started taking some steps towards this. One of the very interesting thing I have seen in the industry is the fraud predictive modeling that has been being built in a lot of players. Now the challenge here is we have very limited data and very limited variables available based on which we can model the behavior. However, some companies have seen the positive results, and that's one big promising step I see that will get prominent over the period of next 2-3 years. Immediately in let's say 2, 3, 6 months, what are the steps people can take? Honestly, there are different initiatives. Like on ANH, I know that there is a very strong network and pushing people to work only with network hospitals that is happening. Now, a lot of companies are avoiding claims which are coming from non-network hospitals because that's where the frauds are maximum. So there are short-term solutions like those, but I think in the long term, the solution is going to be technology-driven, it's going to be data-driven, and it is going to be based on the behavioral changes that we will see in the industry.
Right. Thanks, Amol. This brings to another question, which has different forms in our Q&A session, wherein the crux of it being the unrest in the audience is going to increase in the current times with respect to what is being covered, what is being not, and there are going to be a lot of queries which is coming out to the insurer. So how customer experience is matured in the insurance industry is to cater to these worries and the queries of the customers. So
interesting. Yeah. So honestly, I know 1 or 2 players who have proactively communicated to customers saying that if they face, I mean, first of all, how to avoid the infection. But if at all they face that they are being infected with COVID-19, is their policy covering their claim or not? And that, I think, is a very positive move, because a lot of people, even without asking, have got the answer from few companies saying that, okay, you're covered. Please don't go out, don't do these things so that you are safe. But if at all you do catch the infection, we will make sure you are covered. And these are the steps you need to take. So there is that leadership behavior that we have seen in the industry. Obviously, some companies have done it, some have not done it. And as things move, there will be more communication with the customers. But that's the differentiator, that's the value proposition that we were talking about, right? This is the opportunity to differentiate yourself. Some companies are doing it.
Right. Thanks, Amol. In the cusp of time, I think this is where we take a hit and call this a day. Thank you, everyone. Thank you all the panelists for being patient enough and for such an insightful talk. I'll pass on to Alok.
Thanks, Stuti. I know there were a lot more questions and we would have loved to answer all of them, but obviously hard pressed for time. I think a quick submission on, there were a few questions on the hiring trends and insurance as well. And I think, we both Stuti and I have had experience enough to sort of at least pass an initial comment on it. I think insurance, when you compare it to other facets of financial services, is still doing better. I think the crises that we've seen previously have sort of hardened us. We've learned from our mistakes, and I don't think there's been going back in terms of repeating them. And I think the fundamentals of the business, the grounding is very, very solid. We obviously have avenues where investments are happening, and I do think hiring for stronger skill sets will still keep going on. So I do feel that there will be skill sets that will become redundant, but we will still see an uptake with specific areas such as digital, analytics, technology, actuarial, all these areas, and even the insured tech or the tech-based distribution side still ramping up. And that's where I do see traction still coming in. It was a great and an insightful and a very, very strong on technicality session. I hope everyone sort of goes out of this session much more enlightened and informed about what's insurance going to be post-COVID. A big thanks to all my panelists, to Stuti, to Nicholas, to Sophia for helping us. We hope to keep doing this and add enriching to our candidate and our client base as well. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks so much.
Have a good evening.
Thank you, Alok. Very insightful.
Thanks,
Thank
Alok.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.